this tutorial, we're going to look at doing a gripper for the robotic arm, and we'll just create most of these parts individually and then a few in place, and then we'll look at assembling it as a item. So to start off with, we have a cross piece, so we'll start using the rectangle by center, lock the plane, F3. So the width is 35, tab across, and the height is 8. And then we'll do the other rectangle as well, which is 12.35 across and 18 and 0 rotation. So that gives me my cross section. So if I go trim and just click on here, so that's sketch option is only available when you're on a locked plane. So the thickness here is 3 mil. So if we click on here and click the arrow, and I will go shift to make it symmetric and just type in the value to finish that off. If I want to add in the dimensions, I can, but it's not essential. So now we have a hole, 1.5 diameter. Haven't got it as a preset, so I'll click in here, choose our options up here. So we want to go to a 1.5, and I'll just add that into my save list and go OK. So again, if I lock the plane, Control H takes me through to that sketch view. So there's one there, hover over that to get the center line, place that on there, then we can add a dimension from the edge to the hole, and this needs to be a 2.75 gap. You need to make sure that it's the hole that's going to move and not the end face. So the hole should be highlighted in blue, and then when we change that value, it moves the hole and not the end face. So from there we can select this individual hole, and we want to do a rectangular pattern, and we just place that out here. So as you can see, it's a 2 mil spacing, so we've got 6 holes, and this value in here is going to be 10 to position those, and then we can take those 2 sets and mirror. Holding still, wait for the quick pick to come up. I can choose the plane that I want to draw on and finish on that. So that's the first piece. So we'll go Control Save, Control S, sorry, and we'll just call this cross. So the gripper plate I've done in a video on the robotic arm, but I'll do it again for completeness. So we'll plop, start on this front face here, F3, let's lock it on plane, hit the S key to go symmetric on the line command, and this is going to be 55. Just zoom in. If I hit the A key, that takes me through to the arc command, and the radius on the end here is 6 mil. And just move so that it is vertically above. Right mouse click to restart. Click here, hit the A key, puts me into the arc command again. So this is a 9 mil radius. I'm not sure the size here, so I'll just sketch these in. So we have a circle by center just to the left of the coordinate system, and also a outside radius of 8, so it'll be a 16 diameter circle on the same spot. We can then dimension these just to make sure that they are sort of locked to size and don't change. Then we can go from the edge of the circle to the coordinate system, and this value here needs to be 3.48, and because the coordinate system can't move, this has to move over, and it maintains that symmetry on there. So from here, if I go line, click on a point down there, just hover over here, I can get that in line, and likewise on the other side I can just move that down to touch on there. So I can add in a radius on here. So if I click on the two pieces, make sure that the trim is on. So this needs to be think about 8. And same on this side. Get rid of those two bits with the trim command, this bit here as well. And the other dimension that we need to add in is the distance between here and this hole here, needs to be 33. So let's complete this. So this is 5mm thick, so click within the region, click on the arrow, hit the shift key to go back to symmetric, type in the value that you're after, and that switches everything through. So we have a 4mm hole on one side and a 9mm hole on the other. So we go to the hole command. I have 4mm as a preset. Clicking on the edge drops me to the center of that circle. Right mouse click, go back to my hole command. I need to restart it so that the holes aren't linked. So this one here is a 9mm hole. Recognize this front face, click on the edge and drop that in like so. So then we need to do rectangles by center. So F3 to lock the plane, which allows me to pick up relationships. So this is in line with that hole there. So these are 8 by 5. And then again over here. So this time I only really need to add in the 8 dimension because I'm picking up off the other edge on there. So again, just to ensure that they don't change when I'm adjusting the position of these, I can place these dimensions. I could dimension this one, or alternatively I could use a horizontal vertical and connect the end point of that to the end point of that. Likewise here and in the center as well. So that sort of locks it all in place. And then we've got some dimensions off here. So the distance between here and here is 12. And the distance between the other two rectangles is 10. So we can unlock that, click inside the region. Then if I hold the control key down and click in this one as well, we can take out both sections at the same time. Doesn't matter how far I go through because that distance isn't recorded anyway. So Control S to save this. and this is called the gripper plate. So the next part is bought out component, so it's a servo, and I'm going to just draw sort of like the bottom half to start with. So this is just a rectangle by center, 23 by 12, and I'm just going to draw the bottom half here. So select inside the region and drop it down 12. And that means I can start drawing these tabs on that coordinate system. So from there, if I click on this face, I can just drag it up and take that up another 13 to give me that point there. So then if I use a rectangle by center, sorry, by 2 points, hover over, right mouse click, and choose that plane to draw on. So this is going to be across here. So that thickness is 4.5. And I'll draw the other profile there as well. So over there, this is a 2mm diameter hole. And then I'm just going to draw a line in here. Right mouse click to reset. Make sure that the 2 points are in line. And I'll just force that so when I change the dimensions, it will stay symmetric. So smart dimension 4.5. Distance between these two and that diameter. So this needs to change to 1. And then just for keeping it nice and clean, we'll get rid of those two. And the thickness on here is 2.5. So we click in here, drag it up 2.5. That didn't quite get the right position on there, so we can click on that face there and just drag that back in. Snap on the key point. Like so. So now if I want to, I can either mirror that or I can do a fence select. So a lot of people will sort of think, oh, that's enough to rotate it. But I move this over to the center point. I hold the shift key down and click on the inner plane on the torus. It rotates it around 45. So you can see that the end face here isn't selected. So if I hold the control key down and pick up on this one and the back one, that closes off that shape. So then I just need to hit the copy, rotate it around, and that needs to go 180, and that drops it in on the other side. So then we've got this piece on the top, so circle by center, lock the plane, come off the middle, and I can then just drop that in so it's got the tangency at the top, and I can also go in and add tangency in the other two sides, which positions that correctly. This one's a 5 diameter, so I'll have one in the middle here, and then the other one is offset from the center line. So I'll place this out here somewhere, and then place a dimension on these. So this is 0.57. Use the trim command, and I'll leave it at that. Unlock the plane, click on the region, and this comes up 4.5 mm. So this is just the representation of the servo that we're going to use. And that completes this part, so we'll call this a servo box. So Control S. Okay, for the spindle, I'm going to start with the circle by center. So we'll click in the middle here. This needs to be 7.5 in diameter. So let's just zoom up on that. And actually I'll lock the plane, Control H. So for the next one, I want a 5 mm diameter placed out here and here. So smart dimension, let's lock those 3 values in, and then we can put in the distance between the two is 29.5/2 divided by 2, and then the distance between the two outer circles is 29.5. So then if we use our line command, click on a point out here rather than sort of a square on, I should be able to just move this over until I get the tangency symbol. Right mouse click to reset the command to come back in, and likewise I can do the same with the other sort of like 3 edges. And that locks that in. So then if I use my trim command, I can then just clear these 3 pieces away, unlock the plane, and then we can click within here and just give a depth of 1 mm. I'm just going to take that backwards. I'm not worried too much about having it symmetric. So for the first boss, this needs to be 7.5. Click within the region and drag that forward 5.5, and then circle by center again, 5 mm. Escape, hit inside the region, click on the steering wheel arrow, and 4.5. So let's just hide those PMI, and we can go to the hole command. So this is a 1.5 mm hole. Straight through. So if I hover over this plane first, then if I click on an edge, it should jump it to the middle, and I can right mouse click. So going to my front view, Control F, I can then pick on the hull, go to the pattern command, and this is jumping through to be tangent with the edge here. So I'm just going to drop that on there. So 5 by 1, so tab across. The distance between them is 2 each, so that's 4 gaps of 8 mil in total. So then I can take these two items, holding the control key down to pick it. I can either move my steering wheel over to here and rotate it, or I can just use the mirror command and choose the plane here. Okay, so that completes the spindle. So Control S. So the next part is the locking plate, which is this piece in here, and I'm going to start again with a rectangle by center, and so this is 22. Hit the tab key, and the height is 33, and 0 rotation, so I can just hit enter and zoom in, hit the escape key, click within the region, and actually I will place the inner rectangle as well, which is 23 by 12, so 12 width. So now as I select this area here, and we have a thickness of 5 on this, enter that, and then I can do a rectangle by 2 points, lock the plane here with the F3 key, and this is 8 by 5. And 0 rotation. So by drawing it to size, we can just place the dimensions on, and then we can place the distance between here and here, which is 3.5, and turn the sketch off. Click within the region, click the arrow, and then we can click to a key point, hit the shift key to come out of symmetric to place that in there. So now if I want to copy that down, I can click on that protrusion. As you can see that we've only got the outside edges, we need to include these as well. So you can hold the control key down and pick the front and back faces as well. So that gives us the enclosed box. So I could mirror this, or alternatively I can hold the shift key down, click on here and set my offset, so 3.5 from the other corner. Click to place that new starting point. Up here we have the copy option. So if I scroll down, click the down arrow and click on a point here now, so we've got that offset value, so we can place that in like so. So now we need to add those on the other side. So if I click protrusion 2, hold the control key down, protrusion 3, and again if we pick the front and back faces, I can pick in there. Then if I move my steering wheel down to the center plane, hold the shift key down and click on the inner plane here. That rotates it around. Click on the copy command, and then I can just rotate that around that center. So that needs to be 180 degrees, and that drops that in on the other side. So this completes this part. So Control S, lock and plate, and that completes the next part. So we now have the parts completed for this back section, so we can go and start the assembly. So we go New, Assembly of Active Model, which takes the current part and places that as the first part within the assembly. So from here I can place in the gripper plates. So the smaller end is on the top, so I can just use the middle mouse wheel just to rotate that around to a better orientation, so when I drag it in it's looking sort of correct. So I'm just going to make these two faces, and so that's just using the standard flash fit. Now if I want to, I can click on here and use the capture fit command, which is this one here. So we just need to save the assembly. And that tells me the three relationships I use, so we go OK, so that's stored away with that part. So now when I bring that back in again, what it's going to do is it's going to ask for a face. In this instance it's not the one I want, so I'm just going to override that. But for the next one, it's already picked up on that edge there, and likewise for the third one it's picked up off that bottom one, so we just need to assign it into there. So that just sort of, you know, if you've got parts that you're going to use a lot, then that's a good way of working. Cuts down some of the speed in which you need to put this in. So the servo case is the next one. Again, let's rotate it around to the sort of position that I want to pull it in on, and we'll just drag that in at the back here, and we're going to mate this face on the back face, and these two will be aligned, so we can see it coming in that way, and then I'll take that face to this back edge. I could use a sort of center plane as well if I wanted to. So that sort of puts that in there, and then we've got the spindle here again, not necessary, but it means that I can use the flash fit to place this. The other alternative that I could do is showing you another relationship, is in here we have the insert command, which does a mate and a axial align all in one sort of stage. So if I start with the axial align and then the mate, that drops that in immediately. So one thing that you do need to be aware, you'll see that this is now fully constrained, and the reason for that is that the insert command switches it into a locked position. So you know, if I want to sort of rotate this around, I can then sort of go on the drag command, choose the axis on which I want to rotate it, and then just sort of put in a angle and hit escape. So that sort of gets it into the orientation that I want. So Control S to save the assembly, and we'll move on and create some of the other parts now. So now let's move on to the front section. So we've got the upper and lower plates here. So we'll start with the other one. So Control N for a new isometric part. And this is going to be 35 by 12. So I'm going to start on the front plane. Use the S key to go symmetric. I could do this by a rectangle or center, but this way is just as good. So 35. As I said, by 12. Make sure I pick up off that endpoint, and I can place that down in there. So for the thickness is 5 mil, so click within the region, and we want this to be symmetric, so that's good. And then for the slot, I'm going to draw the center line of the slot, so F3, Control H, again S for symmetric, and this is 12.4 long. So if we add those dimensions, and then a distance between those two, so this needs to be 4 mil up, and then we can use a symmetric offset. Settings needs to be 3 thick, so offset arc, that needs to be 1.5, and that gives me my profile, so I can click within the region, click and drag through. That should automatically adapt to a cutout. Then we've got the holes, so these are 3 diameter. So F3, Control H, and hover over the edge, get the centers aligned. So dimension on here between the holes is 28. And then we'll just center them by using another dimension. Should have locked them. So clicking on this one now. I want to move the one on the left hand side. And height wise, they are 3 down from the top. So want the holes to move, so the arrow is pointing down, and that completes this part here. So we'll go Control Save, and this is the lower plate. So from here, if we look at the upper plate, it's sort of pretty much the same. We've got a height on the side of 26, so I can zoom out of here, click on this top edge, and drag that up another 14 mil. Then I can do the profile on the top. I could draw the semicircle, or I could draw a line down the middle and revolve it around. either way is relevant, so I'm going to go the sketch option. So F3, Control H, and this needs to be the width of 35, so it'll be 17.5. And then there's a cutout in here as well. So if I dimension that to start with, and then put in the rectangle by center, come off the center lines, (23 by 12). Smart dimension, and then the height to the bottom of that is 12. So hit escape, click on this region here, drag it out to there, turn off the symmetry, click in this region here, cut that out. So then we have the two 4mm holes at the top. So I will just drop that down, pick on the option here, F3, get them aligned, and dimension those. So these are 18 mils apart. And I'm just going to go back and lock that dimension. That one I want to maintain. So when I dimension to the coordinate system, they will stay symmetric. So then we just have the two extra holes. So these are 2 mil diameter, and these come off of that edge there and that edge there, and then just a smart dimension, making sure it's the hole that is moving. So 2.5 mil off that edge, and the same on the other side. So we can save this one. Sorry, I'll just save the wrong one. So this one needs to be saved as the upper plate. Now for these gear arms, I'm just going to sort of do a little bit of a cheat. You see the detail on the gear cogs are not detailed. So I'm going to show you that if you're using a trial license or academic or classic or premium, you'll have access to the engineering reference. So I'm going to open up a new isometric assembly, and you'll see in here there are tools sort of maybe hidden away on the left, but over here you'll see that there's a engineering reference tool, so that just may be hidden on the left, and I'm going to use the spur gear to create this. And as it tells me I need to save this, so I'm just going to give it a random name. Okay, so that brings up the gear designer. So I'm going to go into options, and I want to choose the fine material strength at minimum safety factor and find center distance. Go OK. So then I've got a pressure angle of 14.5. No helix. Module is going to be 1.5. And I'm going to leave the rest on this side as is. Then over here I'm going to have 12 teeth, so that changes both gears. The mounting hole is going to be 7mm, and the face width is going to be 5. So I've just got to change that on both of them. I'll leave the rest the same, so we'll go calculate. That tells me whether it's acceptable or not, so this gives me a pass. And you can sort of see what your calculated geometry is in here, so it tells you what your base diameter is and your root diameter and so on. Pitch diameter is one that we're interested in because that's the distance between the two holes. So that needs to be 18mm. So once we've done that, we can go create, and that goes away and just generates the part. So this is done in ordered. So we need to just give that a name, and as you can see, it's been simplified as well, which you know, as you may know, that the more complex a assembly gets, the more faces that it's got to manage, the slower it's going to be. So using simplified parts is another option, and that enables it to work a little bit more efficiently. So once that's finished, it should show us the two gears that are sort of positioned together. So here's what we're sort of looking at. So I want to modify these. So gear 1, if I just double click on that and edit in place, that takes me through to the part while seeing the rest of the assembly, so I can check how the orientation is. So if we go to the top view, we can see what that looks like. So I'll do it in sort of reverse of this. So I've only got 6 teeth. So if I go to my pattern, as you see, as I said, we're in ordered, just because it's easier to sort of maintain this type of geometry in ordered. So if I go to edit, notice it's flipped it over. So the ones I want to get rid of are the ones, so it's this one here, so I want to keep this one and then delete these. So I can go click on my pattern command, and I want to suppress some occurrences. So if I come and just sort of select these ones here, that still leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as we come out of here, you'll see that the pattern has been adjusted to suit. So if I right mouse click and close and return, so ordered is slightly differently because you need to work with the profiles. So from here, if I create a sorry, I've gone right out of the part. I should have just closed the sketch. So from here I need to do an extrude. So I want to work on this top plane. Just zoom out fractionally, use Control Shift right mouse click to pan. And what I've just noticed is this is in so I'm just going to come out of here. You can see that it's sort of not showing square. So what that tells me is that it's in perspective. So if we go back here and go extrude on here, that looks better. So I'm going to draw a line coming down off this edge here, so it's the outside edge, so that's the distance of 50. So I want to hover over this so I can make sure that I'm getting that point there. So that's going to be 50, and then we are coming up 12.5. Make sure you don't pick up off any other geometry. 10 across for the flat, and then it's 2.25 coming in, and then it's just coming back to here. And then if you hit the A key, we can come in and get a tangent arc on here, like so. So if we go smart dimension, I'm going to put the rad in on here, so it might be easier to go from there to there and dimension it that way. Likewise on this one, and the distance in there should be 10.25, and then this one here is a radius of 5. So now that we've got that all tangent, and that should then follow through. Okay, so if we close the sketch and rotate this around, because it's an open profile, we need to specify which side we want to add material to, and we should be able to just pick up off that bottom edge. If you're not getting that, make sure that your key points are set to all. So from here, we're just adding in a couple of rounds. So we go to the round command. This one here is 10. And then we'll change that to 2. Sorry. Change that back to 10. And accept that with a right mouse click to finish. And then for the next one, if we change it to 2, I can click on that edge there, and again right mouse click to finish, and we can exit out of that part, which completes gear 1. So gear 2 is slightly different. It's sort of shown at an angle just because of the meshing on here, so we need to adjust for that. So if we double click on gear 2, so as you can see, the coordinate system is still done the same, but because of the meshing on the gears, it's given us something slightly differently. So if we go to our pattern and choose edit sketch, we need to make sure that we are sort of keeping, so this one's only got the 5 teeth, so we click on the pattern command, suppress, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we can just select these ones and close that away. So that gives us our gearing as we need it. Which I think is correct, but actually I might go back and I think if I remove that one and add that one back in, I think that's the correct orientation. So let's finish on there. So we're just meshing in because obviously it's going to rotate outwards. That's all we need to do. So we can go extrude, and we haven't got a orientation that runs parallel with here, so we'll just choose that option. So that's a 15-degree tilt on there. So if we use our line command and come off here, so this needs to be tilted down minus 15. Tab key, minus 15 in the angle, and the length again is 50. So from here you need to make sure that you have your IntelliSketch options, and you want to have the perpendicular option set, and that means that when we get perpendicular you'll see that little icon come up. So again, this is the same sizes, so 12.5, 10, 2.25, and again we'll come in. Make sure you don't pick up off other geometry, so I'm just going to sort of move up a fraction, hit the A key, and get my tangency on here. Okay, so dimensioning is going to be a little bit more tricky. So if we go Smart Dimension, and I'm going to change this to Use Dimension Axis, and that allows me to specify the axis, so that's my axis. So then when I start dimensioning, that's the axis it's going to use. Which works quite nicely. And I'll just switch that back to horizontal vertical while I'm thinking about it. And lastly, we've got that value in there, which is again 5 mil. So close out the sketch, and it's telling me that it is overlapping somewhere, so something isn't quite closed off. So you can see there's a cross on there. I haven't come off the end of that correctly. So if I use the trim corner and reset this value here, that should allow me to then close. So I've got something else on here. More than two elements are joined at a single intersection. So in here I've got more than, as you can see, there's an overhang on here, so I can just trim that away. We'll use the trim corner. And there's an extra line in there. So if I just delete that, close out of the sketch, and just like I did on the other side, we can sort of get that in correctly. So from here we need to do our rounds again. So it's already set to 2, so I'll do that one first. And then change that to 10. So just right mouse clicking to get that profile. So now we need to draw this section out here. So this is sort of like in reverse again. So if we go extrude, now we've got the straight edge here, we can sort of work off that directly. If you can see, there's a green edge there which shows me the orientation of the view. If I hit N, that takes me around the other one. So I'm going to just move around so that it's a vertical line in there. So from here, there is a center line, so I'm going to just put construction on coming out here. So that's 21, and the angle on that is I'm going to just dimension that. So again, I've just hit the Alt key to switch to 2 points, and I also want to add in an angular dimension here from there to there. Just not quite giving me that relationship I was hoping for. So let's just start it again. Okay, so let's just do a projector sketch on that coordinate system. There we go. And that is still construction. So angular dimension between there, and this needs to be 77.67. So that just pops that into place for me. So we've got a 4mm hole in the middle, and then the outside is 5, I believe. Oh, sorry, 4mm radius. So diameter 8. And that goes on the end of that line. So then we have a let's just draw something in here to match that inner circle. Let's just make this construction, and that gives me something to draw these arcs onto. So coming from the bottom, it's coming from here, so we go a tangent arc from there. Let's turn that construction off to get to a point on here. So that lower one is a 50 radius, so I can add that in afterwards, and then the other one is coming from the center up to the edge. So this one here is again coming up to a tangent on here. So that gives me my profiles. Let's add some dimensions on here. Let's lock that one in. This one here is the 50. This one here is the 40. And then I can use my trim and cut away let's just add in project to sketch on this edge here. I can then trim those portions away. Close the sketch. And I can just drop down to that point there and then right mouse click to finish. So from there we've got a hole in the end. To diameter. Going to make that 3. And close the sketch. So that completes these 2 parts, so we can close back to the assembly. And when I hit Control S to save, that will save the 2 parts. So I'm not going to use this assembly again, but I will use these parts in here. So I'll just close this down and we can place them in as we need. Now the gripper arm, I'm going to work with a rectangle by center. We're over here, F3 to lock it. And the dimensions here are 17.75 and 90. 0 rotation. And there is going to be a line coming down here. Something like that. So let's trim away the pieces we don't need. So smart dimension, I'm going to use effectively a distance between, because I'm going to get rid of some of this other geometry. So that should be 5. And then a distance between here and here. That one needs to be and if I click on this one and hit the A key, that gives me an angle, and that needs to be 60. So I can close this out, click within the region, and the distance here is 10 mil. And hide the PMI. So let's add in the start of the teeth. So that's 2 mil deep with a 1.5 mil. So if I use the line command, hit the N key to switch the orientation, F3 to lock it, and in here I'm going to draw, making sure that I get my perpendicular relationship, which I don't think came in, so I can just quickly add that in now. And then when I dimension it, we use distance between. So come off the top edge. This first one needs to be 1.5. That distance there needs to be 4. And the distance in here, sorry, needed to reset. So that just straightens that up. So escape, close the sketch, click in the region, and then I can just extrude that, cut that out like so. So for the pattern, I can click on the cutout, and then what I want to do is reorientate this down to that bottom edge, so that when I go to the pattern command, it should give me a, we go next, pattern going down, so 3, 1 in the Y direction, and that distance there needs to be 8, and that gives me my pattern. So from there, if I then take those two, so the next lot are down 34.9, so it starts there, off that first edge. Need to put the copy command on. So that adds that in there. So then we have a 15 cut out in here. So we go to a arc by 3 points. F3. So I'm going to start here. The next point is going to be up on the edge somewhere, and it's a 15mm arc, then click to place. So if we dimension that, and then if I use the distance between dimension, I can go from that endpoint to that, and that needs to be 1.5 to position that. So then we can go in here and cut away that area there. So if we hide the PMI, so we've got the portion here, so we've got an extra piece down the bottom, which is just a 6.5 arc, so it's tangent from the edge. So if I go tangent arc and again in to reorientate that, so if I'm coming from here, 6.5 should be back in here, and while I'm here I'm going to draw in the profile coming up the edge here. So if I start off the bottom of here, so it's a tangent arc, and bring it down to join that line there, and then draw up from here. So I just need to make sure that there is a tangent C between there, and then I can use the trim corner to join that up like so. So now I've got two regions. If I start by taking that one, I can remove that, and then this one here, need to hit the shift key, and I can pick up off a key point here to finish that off like so. Okay, so we've got a cutout in here, and again we're coming off here, so I'm going to do it says a 1.5 typical, so I'm going to do a symmetric offset just need to lock the plane, so I'll go into a normal line command first, then I can go to a offset command. So rather than chain, I'll go single. So I'm going to pick up off these edges here, have this one as well, and the one at the top. And as I said, this needs to be 1.5, so if I just add that in, so the length of this line here is 1.13, so if I smart dimension this, and drop that back, so that comes in as my start point. I need to offset that one as well. Just move that out of the way. So then I draw a line from this point here straight down to intersect here, and likewise on this one. And then use the trim command to get rid of these extra small pieces. So the portion here is driven off of these points here, so it just goes from there to there to there to there, like so. So we've also got these 6 diameter pieces on here, so I might just sort of add those in as well, which will cut down a little bit of work. So 6 diameter, and there's one here and one further down, so dimension those. 25 gap between them. This one's on the cut-off line, and it's 5 mm from the outside edge. And then I'll use a connect relationship. Sorry, what I might do is just get that closer. So if I drag that down to somewhere close, and then I can use my horizontal vertical relationship, center point to the point there, and close the sketch. So the first bit is a millimeter in, so if I pick up on this region here and go on the arrow, that needs to be 1 mil. Actually, I might remove these other lines for the moment. I'm going to take that down to the full depth of 2 mil. And then draw those back in again, so if I go to the line command, coming off this point here, midpoint, point there, upper point. So from here I can go and create a rib, and that's going to be 2 mil thick, so take that in and accept that. So this distance here is only 1 mil, so I'm going to click on that face there and then drag that back 1 mil. But as you can see, the other faces are moving as well, so if I hit U to take off the design intent and just put in a 1 mil on that face, I've only moved the one face now. So if you're not sure what the keyings are, you can just hover over and it will tell you on there. So I've just turned that back on again. So we need to then mirror that. So we've got a cutout and rib. That wants to be mirrored. About the base plane. As you can see, we've got the same on the other side now. And then we've just got the 3 mil holes to go through those bosses. So that completes the gripper arm. Okay, so just double checking this, we've got the cutout in here to add as well. So let's go to the line command and just hover over here and get the base plane to draw on. So F3. So we're going to draw a line in here somewhere and hit the A key and bring that out to the edge. So that is a distance on here of 10.25, which matches the gear arm. And then a 10 mil rad. And I'll also click on here and just double check that's that needs to be a sweep of 90. Which I'm not getting. So I'll maybe just try doing a perpendicular. So that's obviously connected to something that I don't want it to. So if I just delete that relationship, I could perhaps place a relationship between there and there, and then connect this in to the edge. So now I need to go to the extrude command, and rather than face I'm going to choose chain and pick up on this. I want to change this option here to cut. Right mouse click to accept, check on the side. This needs to be symmetric, so hit the shift key, and the width on here is just 5. So then we can just resave that with the Control S. Okay, so now for the last item of the pre-designed parts is the link arm, which sits just up here coming off and linking to the gear 2. So if I do a line, look it to the top plane, S for symmetric and 16 long. And then I'll use the symmetric offset. So offset arc, it wants to be 6.5 wide, radius 3.25. So go OK, click on there, right mouse click and finish that. So I can turn off the sketch plane, 3mm thick. And then we've got a hole at one end of 1.5mm. And 3 at the other, so that one's there, so I'll just drop that one in, right mouse click and go back to the hole command, go into my options and change that to 1.5, drop that on there. So this one here is just called the link arm. Now to assemble the rest, we've got the upper and lower plates in here, so I will start with those. So actually no, I'll start with the cross, which is going to sit on top of the spindle. So we'll just align the holes. And that's not completed because the spindle is still free to rotate. So then if we bring in our upper plate, let's just rotate that around, get it roughly in the right sort of orientation. That can then just drag in. So then going off that bottom plane onto here, we have this plane onto the back plane of here, and then we'll use a center plane relationship. Make sure you set to double, and those two, and then double again, center of those. Again, I'll exit out of that, and then we've got the same with the lower plate coming in underneath. So possibly should have rotated it, so the easier way of doing it at this stage is to just force it into doing a mate there. And for the last one, I don't need to do the center plane because I can align it with the top one. So we go plane or align, and that positions that correctly. So from here we've got the servo coming in again, so that drops in. So depending on which side you want the arm 2 to be on, you need to orientate this so that if we're having arm 2 on the right hand side, that's sitting in like so. So we want to mate that to the underside of there. Actually, I've done that wrong, so we'll go back. I want to choose that face there. Then again, we could use center plane if we wanted to, but this is size for size, so I am just going to make the faces. I could have used the holes as well. So again, we've got the spindle coming in, which sits on top of again, I should have orientated it. So just to ensure that that is going in the right way round, I'm going to do it like so. And I can right mouse click to exit out of there. So we've now got the gears to come on top, or on the bottom of here. So these two gears here. So we've got gear 1, and let's rotate that around. So that's sitting on the left as we're looking at it, and that's just going to sit underneath. So make the faces and align the holes. And just so that I can orientate it, I'm going to do a floating alignment from there to the base plane. So that just sort of squares it up, as you can see. And I'll come back and suppress that later. So for this one, it needs to sort of sit around here somewhere. So when I bring that in, that is aligned as we want. So again, face to face. And as you can see, it's just selecting faces on that part. So everything else gets taken out. So it's easier to pick up on faces. So having that like that should then give us the sort of meshing that we're after on here, as we would expect. So then we have the gripper arms. So again, I will rotate this around and bring that in over here. And just because this has a few more faces, it would be easier just to rotate this around to get the face I'm after. Alternatively, you know, you can just choose the axial or planar align or whatever. Which cuts down the amount of surfaces. So for example, if we go into axial align, I should be able to pop in here, and the only thing that's coming up is that inner arc, and likewise there. So it sort of makes it easier to place. So you can see that's fully constrained now because we've locked the position of these. So let's just rotate this one over and bring that in on the other side. So as I said, you know, if we go and choose the make command, it's going to give me fewer surfaces to pick up on. And we need the axial alignment in here somewhere. Okay, so there's something a little bit inconsistent in here, so let's just double click on this part here to allow me to go in and in place activate it. So I'm guessing that maybe the radius on that is wrong. So if we just click on there, that will tell me that dimension, so it's radius 10, so that should be okay. So we'll exit out of that. And what I'm going to do is just drag this out a fraction. That way I can see a little bit more clearly. Make sure that I'm getting the right faces that I'm after. So if I click back on here, go to edit definition, I want to get that radius there and associate it with that one there. And as you can see, it's now sort of dropped in nicely. And we have most of the assembly done. We just need to create the link arm between these two here. So now just the last pieces on getting this assembly right. I'm going to create a part in place. I want to create a bush between these two gripper plates. So I'm going to use the block graphic input option. And if I sort of zoom in, I can sort of set the origin for the part right on that spot there. Go accept. Obviously you need to make sure that it is an isometric part that we are creating. So give the part a name, and that drops us into the part environment while in the context of the assembly. So there's the origins that we've created. So we need to go and first off I want to make sure that we have our peer edge locate on, and I'm going to do a circle by center and click on that plane, lock it, and then I can then sort of step out to there, and the other one I'm going to make 8mm diameter as well. So from there I can pick on my region, extrude it out to a point here on that other part. So then we can close it out of here. So that creates this in place, and based on the options we chose not to ground it or anything, so we now need to just place our relationships for that. So I can do a insert relationship, so do the centers and then the planes. That locks that in place. I also want to actually place the link arm here in between these two components. So if we go up to our top view, that's the sort of orientation I want to get this in. So if I just hold my middle mouse wheel down, I can sort of just rotate this around to roughly the right sort of orientation. Then when I drag this in, I want to mate that face to the underside. I want to align these, and finally I'll need to align these holes here, and as you can see, sort of just switches it into position for me. So I'm going to create a pin that comes right down through here. So again, I'll use the create in place, and this time I'm going to position the coordinate system on those centers. Isometric part, accept that. Give the file a name. So what I'm going to do again is circle by center, lock to this plane here, and we're going to come out to say that point there. Actually, I'll make it 6 mil. Click in here, come up. Say about 2 mil. Then if I do another circle by center, and I can snap to the center of that circle. So just hover over, get the region, and click on my. So this needs to come down through here. Typically I put a thread on the end to put a nut on, so I want to pull it down to say about 28 mil. So that then goes through there. So what we have is the mechanism, but we don't have any way of actually moving these two parts in relation to each other. So I'm going to come back to this part here and go and edit definition, and I'm going to add an extra relationship, and this one will be a gear relationship. So if we sort of hover over here, you can see that we've got a directional arrow, and then if I pick up on the other one as well, you'll see that they're both heading in the same direction, so we want to flip that, and we've got a gear ratio of 1 to 1, so we can go OK on there. Now to sort of check the motion on that, if you remember, I set up a floating relationship on there, so I need to suppress that, because obviously it's not going to be able to rotate if it's locked to the plane. Likewise on the other gear. So right mouse click and suppress. So now if I go to my drag component, you need to make sure that obviously these have the little corners on it, which indicates it's not fully constrained. So if I go to my drag component, click on here, click on the vertical arrow, so I want on rotate. So if I go 5 mil increments, you can see that both are actually working in position. Also what I didn't set was any relationships on this, so we'll need to quickly go back and add those in. So edit definition, and again I'll use the insert. So that locks those two together. So we're sort of free now to do that. One thing we don't have is the setting in here which sort of restricts motion. I could put an angular relationship on here to sort of say how far that is free to move. Another option that you can do is if I go in and edit this part, so double click on it and go into the part itself, I will add in a arc by center. So if I look down on the, if I lock on that plane, so the motion for this comes around these points here. So I'm going to start there, and I know that there's a sort of like a 25-degree motion available. So what I can do is I can use that sketch to restrict how far that is free to move. So come back in here into the assembly. If I right mouse click and show hide components, I can show my sketch. which comes in here. Then I can go back into this part here, and I can create a new relationship. So this one here is a path relationship. And what I can do, actually, you can see I haven't got any holes in here, so I'll come out of there, edit this part in place, and just for simplicity, so we've got a hole. Let's just go to the inspect. I can't remember what size that is. Measure element, 3 diameter. So I need to go to my hole command, through. So I'm going to need to place a hole on the top of these two and accept that. So that's created the holes through there. So we can come out of here and go back to this part, edit definition, and as I said before, we want a path relationship. So we want to create a connection between that and that, and accept. So right mouse click. So what that does is it stops it rotating any further than that point there. So that's the sort of final stage of what we want to achieve in here. So once we've done that, we can right mouse click on here and show hide component, and let's turn off those sketches. And that completes this tutorial.